A pattern appears early. He sits at the desk by the window as morning light spreads across the wood. The journal lies open, not as confession, but as a working surface. He records what appeared first, a worry, then a plan, then a quiet excuse. He names the sequence without judgment. The way sorting messages before replying reveals which one actually matter. When a thought repeats, he marks it with a small symbol. When a thought turns, he underlines the change. He adds one short line about what prompted it. The page becomes a map of decisions. Observation separates from reaction. Noise lowers. Comparison becomes possible. He often arrives quickly, not as evidence, but as speed. When an idea lands fast, he writes it down and places a question beside it. What did it skip? What did it assume? Who benefits from the shortcut? He notices the mind borrowing yesterday's conclusions, reusing old answers without checking whether conditions still apply. In the margin, he draws two columns, claim and support. Some lines gain weight when examined, others thin out. He treats the process like clearing a lens. The decision remains open. Comparison follows a familiar rule. The mind measures the present against an imagined version of how it should look. He writes the should sentence, then rewrites it as a description of what is. The change is small, but readiness shifts. He adds a third line. What can be done in 10 minutes at this desk with what already exists? One paragraph instead of a full report. The journal holds these layers like stacked panes of glass. The smaller action feels modest. It moves more often. Attention behaves like currency. He tracks it as if it were a budget. Where did the last hour go? Not in minutes, but in mental purchases, rehearsed conversations, future problems, replayed mistakes. He lists them and tags each with a category: control, approval, safety. Repeated worry replaces focused work without announcing the trade. Across days, the same categories return wearing different labels. He notices how often the mind chooses a simple story over a precise one. Urgency benefits from structure. He tests a rule. If a thought feels urgent, it deserves to be taken apart. He writes it out and separates it into parts: fact, prediction, demand. The fact is usually small. The prediction is usually loud. The demand often sounds practical. Seeing them apart changes how the thought sits. He adds a fourth line: value. What is this urgency trying to protect? He checks whether it matches the day's commitments, so urgency doesn't override priority. Review brings direction. He finishes by scanning his marks: symbols for repeats, underlines for pivots, circles for 10-minute actions. He notices the mind is not chaotic. It is economical. It prefers familiar routes because they are already built. It calls this safety. He writes one sentence summarizing today's dominant routes, then one suggesting an alternative. One call instead of reorganizing plans. One task instead of postponement. The desk remains steady. He closes the journal, breathes once, and carries the pattern forward, recognition arriving before effort is misapplied.